More than 100 years have passed since the story of the legendary ship Titanic was fully told and seemed to be complete, as if forever etched into the collective memory of humanity. Throughout all these years, the tragedy of this majestic vessel has been repeatedly recreated on film screens, served as the basis for museum exhibits, and become part of folk legends, shaping the image of one of the most famous maritime disasters in history. Every attempt to recount what happened seemed conclusive. All key facts and evidence appeared to have been discovered and studied. However, recently, at a depth of nearly 4 kilometers in the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean, a team of scientists made a discovery capable of radically changing the established narrative about the Titanic's sinking. Their findings not only questioned our previous knowledge, but also uncovered secrets that could completely overturn the commonly accepted understanding of this tragedy. If you thought all the secrets of this ship had already been revealed, this story will make you reconsider your views and realize that there are still many unexplored aspects ahead. Before getting to the main point, I would like to note that every support is important in our work, so we ask you to pay attention to the content to understand how astonishing the recent discoveries have been. For many years, stories about the Titanic seemed complete, as if every facet of this tragedy had been thoroughly examined and no new details remained. It seemed that all evidence and testimonies had already been found and documented, leaving the impression that the ship's story was finally written. However, behind this apparent conclusion lay a crucial secret. The main clues indicating the causes and circumstances of the sinking had long remained hidden in the darkness of the deep, nearly 4-kilometer abyss of the ocean. These clues were invisible and unreachable for humans, and only recently has the situation begun to change. It was not due to new record-breaking dives or daring expeditions that everything changed, but because at last the wreckage was viewed from a new perspective using modern digital technologies, photogrammetry, and advanced scientific research methods. By applying revolutionary 3D scanning technologies, scientists created an accurate digital replica of the sunken Titanic, which became a kind of its digital twin. This mission was the result of collaborative efforts by specialists from companies specializing in deep-sea engineering, with support from organizations such as the National Geographic Society and Atlantic Productions. Their goal was ambitious and clearly defined: to create a complete, nearly flawless map of the shipwreck site, including every detail and element, in order to answer questions that had remained only assumptions for decades. A whole fleet of robotic underwater vehicles equipped with multispectral cameras, laser scanners, and specialized software for three-dimensional mapping was deployed for this purpose. For weeks, these robots methodically and meticulously scanned every section of the seabed, capturing over 700,000 photographs from all possible angles and collecting approximately 16 terabytes of data. These figures attest to the incredible effort and high precision of the work, as each image and each data point were the result of painstaking efforts by specialists striving to recreate the most accurate and detailed model possible. According to one of the leading engineers, this can be called a reincarnation of the method to return to the very night of the Titanic's sinking at the moment of its tragic collision. The initial images obtained caused a real sensation among experts, even seasoned specialists who had long studied this case. It was evident from them that the bow of the ship retained its majestic shape, indicating that key elements and possibly important clues were located there, in the bow area. The images clearly outlined the contours of New York, which the vessel never reached, as well as curved railings, empty portholes, and anchors. Today, thanks to modern technologies and unprecedented digital modeling capabilities, scientists have been able to obtain unique, invaluable information about the Titanic tragedy that was previously inaccessible or unreachable. In particular, analysis of hundreds of artifacts preserved in the ocean depths has allowed tracing the tiniest details related to the ship's sinking. Among such finds were even the smallest elements: individual rivets, a child's shoe with a worn-out logo, and fragments of a tea set, whose coloration and condition suggest what the luxury items decorating the ship's interiors look like. Moreover, modern technology enabled precise determination of where these objects ended up after the disaster, providing experts and criminalists with the ability to construct a detailed chronology of the events leading up to the vessel's sinking. As a result, a highly accurate digital model has been created, capable of examining even the teeth on gear teeth or detecting burn marks on wiring, much like a tiny microscope. This discovery not only debunked established myths and legends, but also made significant corrections to our understanding of how the catastrophe unfolded. One of the most important findings was confirming that the hull rupture of the Titanic did not occur instantaneously, as depicted in movies and artistic reconstructions. Part 3 of 13. The scan revealed that the destruction occurred in a painful sequence, allowing one to trace how steel beams gradually twisted, how decks unfolded and folded, and how mechanisms were scattered hundreds of meters apart, all during the furious rotation of the stern as the ship sank. At the same time, the bow of the vessel, on the contrary, slowly and smoothly sank into the mud, explaining the difference in the appearance of the debris and why personal belongings from luxurious cabins were found next to Kokagar's shovel. Each new pass of the research submarines uncovered more details previously hidden from view. Tangled corridors with charred wiring, collapsed beds among which luggage and passengers' personal items were scattered. Thanks to high-precision technology, it was possible to reconstruct where the people were in their final moments, how chaos unfolded, who tried to escape, and who ran out of time, all of which helped to understand how events developed in the final minutes of the ship's life. However, despite these visual and digital discoveries, new, deeper questions arose that still lacked definitive answers. If the exterior of the Titanic told its story about destruction and destructive forces, then the interior spaces, especially the engine rooms and electrical systems, likely hold even more important and dramatic information. What was happening in the last hours of the ship's struggle for life? Were there heroic acts, tragic fights for rescue, or was it all a matter of utter hopelessness? The scans of the final hours show that the focus shifted from the upper decks, where panicking passengers tried to reach the lifeboats, and where the orchestra continued playing music, as if trying to give the last moments a certain solemnity, to the depths of the ship, to its heart. It was there, in the engine rooms, that the true battle for the vessel's fate and its crew took place. It was there, beneath the decks, that fire and steam raged, and conditions were so harsh that until recently, this part of the story remained in the shadows, covered by layers of speculation and assumptions. But now, thanks to three-dimensional scanning, these shadows have been dispelled, revealing a picture of incredible courage and self-sacrifice. The Titanic was not just a liner, it was a true floating power plant, equipped with more than 29 boilers, over 150 furnaces, and some of the largest steam engines of its time. Numerous high-quality images, captured at a resolution allowing for the examination of the tiniest details, demonstrated how astonishingly precise and clear the lower decks of the famous Titanic were. Careful forensic experts, studying these images meticulously, discovered an astonishing fact. The metal grates in boiler room number 2 were bent inward, as if someone had pressed on them from inside intentionally. Such damage indicated that the heat and pressure inside the boilers remained extremely high, even as water was fed into the system. In other words, the temperature and pressure did not decrease despite the cooling efforts and attempts to stabilize the situation. This could only happen in one case: if the duty engineers and maintenance personnel continued actively flooding the boilers and operating the systems, despite the danger and obvious signs of an impending catastrophe. At those moments, they remained the only barrier between death and salvation, acting as true guardians of the ship's vital forces. Their unwavering determination to keep working, regardless of everything, gave many passengers and crew a chance. Imagine, every extra minute when the lights shone in the corridors, every minute when the pumps fought against the onslaught of icy water, was another life saved, another hope, another child rescued, another group of passengers finding their way to safety. These people, often remaining in the shadows, their names partially recovered from historical documents. It was precisely thanks to their heroic patience and resolve that order on the decks did not turn into chaos and panic. Recall the words of survivor Lawrence Bisley, who wrote, "The lights were steady and reassuring. They gave us courage. Only later did I realize that someone paid for this with their life." These words help understand the price paid for that sense of calm and security. The details obtained through scanning depict an almost cinematic picture of the tragedy. An unnoticed clue was found in the twisted aft part of the ship, a manual steam valve that was jammed in the open position. This valve, apparently, supplied steam from the boilers to the dynamos, powering the electrical system. Survivors remembered that electricity burned until the very end, and earlier such claims seemed exaggerated. Now, thanks to metallurgical analysis, it became clear it's true. Metals show traces of prolonged operation under extreme conditions, indicating a conscious effort to keep the generators running. Engineers, electricians, and maintenance staff, studying three-dimensional damage models, discovered even more disturbing details: melted wiring and corroded distribution boxes at the Bow Power Station. These damages were not caused by random circumstances, but indicated system overload. Some wires were so melted by heat that they could not be recognized, while others were heavily corroded. This meant that engineers deliberately rerouted current through backup circuits, trying to maintain power supply to sustain the system's vital functions. Inside the engine rooms, people stood knee-deep in icy water, maintaining the balance of energy and light despite the dangers. If they had left their posts just 15 minutes earlier, the ship's decks would have plunged into complete darkness, making rescue operations impossible. This quiet, painstaking heroism, hidden from most eyes, sharply contrasted with the panic and chaos that reigned at the top of the ship. In the investigation materials found by historians, there are testimonies from survivors that take on new meaning in light of modern research. Women and children rushing to the lifeboats recalled that the ship seemed like a living creature, even as it was dying. It is now clear that this sense of order and wholeness was not accidental. It was purchased through the efforts of engineers and mechanics who remained below to keep the systems running until the very end. Their names rarely appeared in the records. In the complex and dramatic events surrounding the sinking of the legendary Titanic, every detail takes on special significance, especially when it involves the people caught in the very heart of the destruction. Among them was a trimmer named Walter Hurst, one of the few who managed to survive after the ship's engine room was engulfed in chaos and destruction. He recalled how, in the most critical moments, water rapidly flooded the compartments, and the sound seemed to merge into a thunderous roar, surrounding them from all sides. At that moment, those around him were shouting. Panic was spreading everywhere. But the engineers, including Hurst, maintained an unprecedented calm. They continued to perform their duties as if they were in a different reality, ignoring the panic and horror that reigned around them. How they managed to maintain such composure is unknown, especially since the lights in the engine room remained on, as if they were fighting against the darkness itself, like heroes battling for every life, every second. Hurst's words fully align with modern data and the results of new research. It was the professionalism and self-sacrifice of the engine room crew that played a decisive role for hundreds of people. Thanks to the heroic efforts of these specialists, many were able to escape or at least delay the inevitable. The emotional impact of such discoveries is immense. It prompts a new perspective on the tragedy that more than a century ago became a symbol of loss, questions, and unresolved mysteries. Why were there not enough lifeboats? Why did the ship sail so quickly despite warnings? Why was aid delayed? These questions remained unanswered for a long time. But modern technologies, particularly digital scanning, allow us to answer another important question. Who stayed at their posts when hope was fading? Who kept their composure and discipline? Who was ready to sacrifice themselves to save others? And who turned the technical catastrophe into an expression of high human spirit? Visual materials showing deformed grates, melted wires, and a single open valve tell a story that cannot be fully conveyed in words. In these fossilized metal remnants, in their twisted and damaged forms, are captured the fates of heroes who remained unnoticed by the general public. Heroes whose courage and self-sacrifice are forever etched into the metallic memory of the ship. These fragments still bear witness to the strength of the human spirit, to those who dared to face irreversible destruction and emerge from the ordeal with dignity. Finally, such heroic acts and their consequences have received well-deserved recognition. Maritime safety expert Dr. Elaine Burns, who specializes in interpreting scan results, summarized all of this in her report. She emphasized that the true legacy of the Titanic lies not only in how it was lost in the vast ocean waters, but also in the people who, in those terrifying moments, at the cost of their lives, managed to delay the inevitable, giving others a chance at rescue. To say that these people were simply brave would be an understatement. They were the boundary between life and death, between salvation and ruin. Their actions and courage are confirmed by data showing that more than 30 individuals, trapped below decks, fought against the sea and fate in a losing battle. Despite all circumstances, they managed to hold back the inevitable, altering the course of the tragedy and giving hope to those still believing in salvation. It was these efforts that allowed many to survive, offering themselves and others a chance at rescue. Modern technologies applied to the study of the wreckage not only rehabilitate forgotten heroes, but also reveal how close the final catastrophe was. Engineers calculated that if the generators had failed just 10 minutes earlier, chaos would have reigned on the ship. There would have been no light necessary for evacuation, no power for the pumps, and no chance for the crew. The engineers involved in the design and construction of the legendary Titanic demonstrated their unrestrained and sometimes reckless confidence, providing the world with an answer consisting only of rivets and iron plates. Despite all their daring and skill poured into building this giant vessel, modern society continues to seek understanding of the reasons behind its tragic demise. While the world tries to comprehend these painful revelations, modern scanning and modeling techniques are beginning to uncover new mysteries related to the Titanic's fate. Why, despite all efforts and technological superiority, did the ship suffer such a complete and tragic collapse? What role did its structural features and construction methods play in this? Was the Titanic's destiny predetermined from the start, or did hidden flaws, unknown even to its engineers and designers, contribute to its sinking? These questions demand thorough investigation, and the next study takes us from human stories to mechanical and forensic reconstruction of the ship itself. Part 7 of 13. Gradually, scientists are utilizing the latest scanning technologies to create precise models that help understand how the fracture occurred, analyzing the tiniest factors that could have been decisive in the survival or death of hundreds of people. The story becomes even more impressive when the opportunity arises to observe how, in the final moments when the lights and pumps were ignited, the energy they emitted gradually dwindled and the mechanisms ceased to function. Did the very structure of the Titanic, its metallic bones, play a role in its demise even before the ship left port? The answer lies in the twisted metal and shattered decks, where fate, engineering, and human will clashed in the coldest and harshest hours of history. Everything that followed shocked not only those who survived the catastrophe, but also caused the entire world to rethink its knowledge of the most famous shipwreck in history. While the engineers responsible for the Titanic's design fought their final battle beneath the decks, another, no less intense battle was unfolding on the surface, a battle against the laws of physics, cold iron, and the relentless force of the Atlantic Ocean. Centuries of artists and filmmakers have tried to capture in their works that terrible moment when the giant ship slowly but inevitably tore in two. We have all seen dramatic footage of the bow sinking into the watery abyss, while the stern rose toward the sky, seemingly heralding its final fall. People clinging to the rails watched as the greatest liner in the world disappeared into the dark, cold water, as if dissolving into the ocean. But what do the new scans actually reveal? For the first time, a frame-by-frame forensic reconstruction of the ship's destruction has been created, disproving many old assumptions and conjectures that persisted for decades. It all begins with the fact that modern research has described the catastrophe in terms of paper thickness. Previously, it was believed that an iceberg tore through the Titanic's hull with a massive hole, and this version became almost canonical. However, new scientific discoveries reveal a much more terrifying truth. A highly accurate three-dimensional model uncovered damage consisting of 6 long, thin, razor-like slits stretching nearly 90 meters along the starboard side of the vessel. Imagine a series of surgical incisions running parallel to the waterline, each sufficient to allow water to enter the ship. This was not a single tragedy, a simple breach caused by sudden damage, but a slow, agonizing death of the ship caused by thousands of tiny cuts and slashes. He, like a wounded creature, was bleeding out, slowly sinking into the watery darkness, while on the surface, efforts still continued to prevent further catastrophe. A sound was carried through the air, something none of them had ever heard before. Like the entire world around was filled with an unbearably loud, disgusting, tearing roar, as if thousands of freight trains were passing by simultaneously. This terrible noise, described by one of them as a great, groaning roar, pierced to the very depths of the soul, giving the impression that something incredible and indescribable was happening inside the ship. They could hear the central axis, the very foundation supporting the entire structure, breaking and cracking. Modern scanning methods showed that the destruction was neither rapid nor uniform, but occurred in a twisted, distorted sequence, rather than in a calm or even manner. Instead, a three-dimensional model based on the data indicated slow, furious, and relentless processes of disintegration. The focus was on the bow of the ship, which was literally dragging downward like a heavy weight, while the stern, on the contrary, twisted and stretched, trying to resist the overwhelming force of destruction. During a brief moment that felt infinitely long, the entire structure, as if under the influence of an invisible force, could not withstand the pressure, and the debris scattered in all directions. At the very center of this chaos, investigators traced the pattern of tension that engulfed the entire vessel. Torsional forces, the stress within the metal running along its spinal axis. The scan surface clearly recorded traces of metal fatigue spread across the entire spine of the ship, as if it had been stretched to its limit, like a string being played with a destructive melody. Deck after deck, layer after layer. All these details were recorded and documented, telling the story of the sequence of deformations, beams bending and folding like origami, and bulkheads subjected to loads they were not designed to withstand, following their inevitable fate. Places where the hull was especially vulnerable and torn, fractures and splits, looked so fierce that the pieces had twisted and warped like paper burned in flames. The site of the wreck retained its tragic yet poetic model. The bow, raised vertically and mournfully immersed in the surface of the ice ocean, reminded us that the ship had tried to keep moving long after everything was already clear, as if resisting fate, desperately clinging to life. In contrast, the debris of the stern, which had been twisted, collapsed, and lay in disarray, was still in chaos. Its decks, flattened and warped, continued to shift, creating the impression that the energy of destruction was still emanating from these ruins. Scans and studies revealed not only the history of the destruction that had occurred, but also its timing, the precise moment and manner in which the events unfolded. By analyzing the debris distribution, scientists were able to trace their trajectory, from coal bunkers to handrails and even crew members' personal belongings. Now, armed with this data, marine archaeologists could reconstruct the sequence of the breakage, when exactly and in what order the ship's sections separated, how the destruction propagated through its midsection, leading entire segments of the vessel to collapse inward as if succumbing under their own weight. As a result of the catastrophe, the central part of the ship virtually vanished, scattering across a debris field nearly 600 meters long. Forensic experts describe this moment as a mechanism of mechanical disassembly. Each detached panel, each twisted and warped metal rib, serving as clues that reveal the chronology of the disaster. Inside these wreckage, even in their silent state, forces exceeding 30 degrees were already too much to leave without consequences, and it was then that the final, irreversible break occurred, becoming one of the most astonishing and horrifying discoveries made through scanning. At the heart of this destruction was the rotation of the stern, the moment when the bow of the ship plunged into air pockets trapped within the aft compartments. These air spaces, like invisible bubbles, held part of the vessel while its rear continued to spin chaotically, transforming the stern into a rotating, disintegrating shell. Initially, it didn't just fall, it spun, changing orientation, twisting as if a living organ, and only afterward did it collapse downward with crushing force, like a giant stone fragment dropped from a height. At the moment of collapse, the entire internal volume of the ship was compressed, its interior filled with debris, and fragments and mechanisms from broken compartments were ejected outward, creating a wide corridor of wreckage on the sea surface. This corridor was so vast and complex that it was the first time it was meticulously documented and mapped. Amid this chaos, among broken lifeboats, a shattered single-deck chair lodged in a collapsed hatch, and even the broken remains of the Marconi radio room, where distress signals had been transmitted in the final moments before sinking. All of this became part of the mosaic of the terrible catastrophe. Marine forensic expert Dr. Emily Kenson, who led part of the analysis from scans conducted in the year 25 of the 21st century, described what she saw with deep reverence and awe. She emphasized that what was recorded was not just a single, uniform break, but an entire chain of destruction, each leading to the next, like a domino effect. In this process of engineering catastrophe pushed to the limit, every element, whether metal structures, mechanisms, or even human remains, was scattered across the entire space. Part 10 of 13. The Kenson team was able to identify the areas where the destruction was most intense, and it is these sections that may hold the answers to the most important questions regarding the ship's construction and its ultimate fate. According to experts, these zones are the key to unlocking the mystery that will help us understand why and how the Titanic met its tragic end, and what could have been done differently to prevent such a fate. What do all these discoveries mean for the broader history of this legendary vessel? First and foremost, they confirm numerous eyewitness accounts that had long been dismissed as exaggerations or confusion. Several survivors from the lifeboats repeatedly testified that they saw the ship break apart before it was fully submerged. These accounts were long disputed by experts, as official versions described a gradual sinking. However, the three-dimensional model created based on new data confirms that the ship indeed fractured, and that this break was neither uniform nor homogeneous, but rather dramatic and spectacular. The process of destruction occurred gradually, with differences in speed and nature, and the bow section sank into the water later than the stern, creating an effect similar to a whirl of metal and chaos. The final scene, the sinking of the stern, was a whirl of metal, sparks, and destruction. It was more than just a sinking. It was the final chord of a tragedy built on numerous small decisions, both heroic and tragic. Despite all the discoveries and new information shedding light on what happened, mysteries still remain for scientists. For example, questions about the missing parts of the ship. Scans revealed that in the debris field, there are empty areas, places where, apparently, the most vital parts of the vessel simply disappeared. Some experts suggest these sections collapsed under pressure, while others believe they are buried so deep in the history of human fate, connected to the Titanic tragedy, that they remain elusive. The story of human lives intertwined with the Titanic's disaster is far from over. Every find, every recovered detail, every artifact mapped onto the digital reconstruction of events. These all serve as living reminders of interrupted lives, of those who lost their lives in that terrible catastrophe. Among these countless testimonies is a lost shoe, a broken cup, a folded coat. All these are not just everyday objects but symbols, memorials for those whose lives were cut short suddenly and tragically. These debris scattered across the sea serve as stark reminders of how fragile human destiny can be, and how tragedies can leave an indelible mark on the memory of history. One researcher, holding in his hands a scan of a child's toy found among the wreckage, directly stated, "The Titanic is not just an instructive story about technological progress. It is a memorial to everyone who trusted this ship, worked on it, dreamed of new horizons, or simply was part of its crew and passengers." There is a profound meaning in his words. The arrangement and placement of debris on the seabed are now read as a living testament to the lessons of history about human ambition, risks, and the high price paid for pride in the pursuit of greatness. And if you thought that the ship's final moments were particularly dramatic, everything beneath the layer of rust and sea dust still has the power to reveal the greatest secrets and mysteries of that tragedy. Each new scan pass, each addition of pixels to the digital model, brings researchers closer to solving age-old enigmas. Could the missing engine parts or the vanished components from the compartments provide answers to questions that have haunted humanity for years? Was the Titanic doomed from the very beginning, or was its fate predetermined by a combination of random errors, human negligence, and natural forces? The search for answers continues, and researchers do not stop. They delve deeper into the heart of the wreckage, uncovering secrets encoded in twisted steel, deformed structures, and traces left on the ocean floor. If the ship's collapse was a mechanical symphony, an orchestra of system failures, then new data point to decisions made at the highest levels. They tell of last desperate messages echoing through the night, of rescue attempts, fear and hope, human courage in the darkest hours. As digital scans proceeded over the Titanic's remains, they revealed more than just twisted steel. It was like a whisper from the past, a quiet voice of those who perished, leaving behind secrets stored in the depths of the Atlantic. Suddenly, during the analysis, not only did a picture of the tragedy emerge, but also a story of decisions, courage, and fear faced by those trapped beyond visibility. In the reconstructed radio room, where Marconi's radio stations once operated, scientists were able to precisely trace the path of the final SOS signals, those transmitting cries for help. Even as water increasingly flooded the lower decks, radio operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride continued to send distress messages despite the deteriorating signal quality. Their last messages grew weaker with each passing moment, perfectly aligning with the data obtained from digital modeling. Signs of fire in relay boxes, blown fuses, clusters of salt-soaked cables, all testify to how gradually the ship lost its combat readiness and reliability. The story of the Titanic ceased to be merely a matter of guesses and assumptions. The evidence remaining in digital form served as a vivid testament to the tragedy. But not only technology and engineers left their mark on this story. Scans found near the officers' quarters and on the ocean floor reveal astonishing discoveries that seem to transport us back to the time of the Titanic tragedy. Among the wreckage and items buried over time, artifacts belonging to passengers were discovered, as well as toys that once brought joy to children's hearts. Equally astonishing was the fact that inside an unsent postcard was preserved, a testament to the fact that life on board continued until the very last moment, despite the impending catastrophe. Due to the harsh cold conditions, many details and artifacts have been remarkably well preserved, as if frozen in time, allowing us to look at the past from a new perspective and understand it a little deeper. These findings remind us that the Titanic was not just a massive passenger ship. It represented something much greater, a living collection of human stories, dreams, hopes, and final words scattered across the ocean floor. In this place, among the debris, many secrets are kept. And although not all mysteries have been fully uncovered, many myths and legends about the ship have already ceased to be mere speculation. Modern research and technology have helped dispel some of the enigmas surrounding its sinking. In particular, no signs of deliberate sabotage or hidden cargo that could have caused the disaster were found. On the contrary, only clear traces of mechanical failure and destruction caused by natural forces remain at the site of the tragedy. This story is not only about how the ship sank, but also about the courage and resilience of those on board. People fought for hope, even as their world literally crumbled around them, trying to maintain dignity and faith in the future. Modern methods, such as digital scanning, have radically changed our perception of Titanic's history. Every time devices scan the seabed, they uncover new clues, new details, and along with them, raise new questions. Researchers immersed in their work know this is only the beginning. Behind each new discovery lie yet unrevealed secrets, much still unknown, waiting for their moment to be heard and understood. In their hands are the keys to unraveling the past, which continues to remain a mystery. During the investigation, not only facts about the tragedy are revealed, but also stories about the people, their hopes, sacrifices, and losses that are yet unfinished. The ocean, like a keeper of all these secrets, will not give everything away at once and probably never entirely. It seems to hold its secrets deep within, slowly revealing them to researchers. And if you think this is the last chapter in the story of the Titanic, remember, the history of this legendary ship is still being written. Every new discovery is a fresh twist, a new chapter that complements and expands our view of the tragedy and its heroes. So it can be confidently said that the search continues. In every new finding lie not only facts but also lessons, hopes, and pain, making this story still alive and relevant. The story of the Titanic is not only a tragedy of the past, but also a constant reminder that human destiny continues to be written, even in the most difficult circumstances. There are still mysteries waiting for their moment to be uncovered, And perhaps it is within these secrets that the answers to questions that have troubled humanity for over a century are hidden. Thank you for staying with us, exploring and delving into this fascinating story. If you find what we do important, we kindly ask you to support our work. This can be done by liking our content and showing your appreciation. To ensure you don't miss new episodes and stay updated with the latest news, you can activate notifications. This way, you'll always know when new discoveries are on the horizon. After all, the story of the Titanic, like life itself, continues to evolve, opening new horizons for those seeking truth and meaning in the past.